Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. I have a really fun and fascinating guest with me today. His name is Dr. Brad Miller. He is a husband, father, grandfather, pastor, podcaster, transformational leader, founder at 40 Day Way, and host of the Beyond Adversity podcast. He helps people crush adversity to achieve peace, prosperity, and purpose in their lives. Dr. Brad also has the distinct honor of killing Dadzilla and saving his daughter's marriage. Oh, his daughter's wedding. Sorry about that. Brad, thank you so much for being here.
What a beautiful introduction. Thank you, Cheryl. And I love your name, Cheryl. I love. What a great name. And I love. And it's an honor to be on with a legit ninja here and to share some stories with you and share some insights that hopefully will serve you and your audience in such a way that whatever adversity they're going through, whatever situation, circumstance, maybe we can help just a little bit to help get beyond that to what I like to call the life of peace and prosperity and purpose, the promised life.
Well, thank you so much for being here. We are all about overcoming obstacles here on the show. And I've been looking forward to this conversation for a very long time. Anybody who calls themselves Dadzilla and the fact that they killed Dadzilla to save his daughter's wedding is somebody that I just had to talk to.
Well, that's quite a story. And it's really was a real pivotal point for me, Cheryl. In short, I just retired last year as a pastor for 42 years. And in the just to give you a little context there. So in that process, I have had the privilege of officiating in the neighborhood of 250 to 300 weddings over my course, similar number of funerals and other special life events people go through when they call upon a pastor. And over the course of time, weddings became something that a lot of times they were a lot of fun and everything, but sometimes they just shot a weekend for me because it meant a rehearsal and the wedding and big deal and a big event. And I wasn't always involved. And sometimes they became a ritualistic for me. But a few years ago, my daughter came to me. She's now 36, but she came to me a few years ago and said to me, Dad, would you please officiate and conduct the wedding of my fiance and I? And Cheryl, I guess I've never had a moment quite like that moment. And you just got to bear with me because sometimes I still get a little bit emotional about it because I'm actually looking at her picture as we sit right here, my picture of my daughter and my two sons when they were younger. But my mind immediately went to when she was 4 years old and she climbed up in my lap and she said, Daddy, I don't want to grow up. Oh. And and just in a real sweet 4-year-old way. And I lied to her, Cheryl. I lied to her then. I said, you don't have to. And I knew when I was lying to her as a 4-year-old, I knew someday this day would come that she's going to tell me she was going to get married, which I already knew that was bad enough. That was big enough deal. She told me she's getting married. Then a few months later, Dad, would you conduct the wedding, be a part of the wedding? And I just turned into mush and teared up a little bit. And I said, and my mind was around, of course I will, honey, but I was also scared to death, more nervous than I've ever been my whole life, almost more nervous than anything I've ever done about that prospect. And I don't know why. I do know why now, but at the moment it was just like my heart jumped to my throat, and it was an incredible moment. And I gave her a hug. She gave me a hug. And I said, well, and I made her one promise there, Cheryl. I said to her, Whitney, I will just do whatever I can do to help this be the greatest day of your life. And I meant that. So I made that promise. The key thing is I'm going to talk about here, Cheryl, is making a promise and doing what you can to keeping your promise no matter what. And so there's that part of things, that promise part there. but then you got to implement, you got to follow through.
Mhm. Well, and
And
I like the fact that you certainly didn't set the bar as high as possible. I mean, nothing like putting a little bit more pressure on yourself.
oh, wow. Well, I put a lot of pressure on myself, and she wanted, and I wanted to be a part of her wedding, and
Mhm,
I did. I really did. I would have been hurt if I hadn't been asked, to be quite
mhm,
honest with you. But she asked, and but also what I wasn't really aware of at that time, Cheryl, is, and I kind of knew this was going to be the case, but my daughter decided, she wanted to do the big wedding. I mean, the big wedding.
mhm,
The outdoor venue, the big barn, and everything that goes with a huge wedding,
mhm,
a year and a half of preparation, all kinds of things going on. And in that year and a half of preparation, I began to go a little bit more of depression about the whole deal, thinking about the moment was going to come. And that
mhm,
meant I started to kind of deal with things not so healthy way, Cheryl.
mhm,
I gained some weight. I got a little bit out of sorts with some family members, including her and some other family members. There was also some blended family dynamics, which were
mhm.
weird and
Ooh,
difficult to navigate. There was some health issues that family members had, several things going on. But as I got closer to time, I realized that, okay, this is going to be a big wedding, hundreds of people there. In a, this was her moment.
mhm,
She wanted, and you mentioned earlier about to help not to mess up her marriage, and she's got a great marriage now. But I knew just from my own experience of weddings, I think the worst record I ever had is I married somebody, and a couple, and 6 weeks later they got divorced. So that was not good. But I also know that I've had married some other people. I got a notification from a buddy of mine recently who I married when I was in college. And so he's been married for 45 years now. So
mhm,
I've seen both sides of that. But what I'm getting at here is that I knew that the wedding in preparation for it, kind of sets the stage for your marriage.
mhm,
And I want to do everything I could to do my part in that. But what I mean by a lot of things going on is that she asked me, and this is part of what we did. She asked me to, in a big wedding, it meant not only, doing the vows, which I was prepared to
mhm.
do, but it meant walking my daughter down the aisle. And I got very nervous about that. And this is an outdoor venue. And I thought, I'm going to step in a pothole and do a header into the front row on my, you know, to her in-laws or whatever it's going to be. And I was also asked to give the uh, the father daughter toast at the wedding
Mhm,
reception.
mhm,
And in this particular case, I knew that also meant that in this blended family situation, that I was one of two dads giving that talk. Uh, so that just was weird and awkward. And I knew I felt a weird sense of competition. I know it's sick, but
wow.
I did about that. I also was, but you know what the scariest thing about everything was, Cheryl? The,
What?
s- the scariest thing of all for me was the dance,
Um,
the father daughter dance. Scared me to death. Now,
You
hey,
know, I
I'm,
honestly I can understand that. It really makes sense to me. I understand that. If you have that many people at the wedding, and there you are, the center of attention with your daughter who just got married by you, and everybody's watching, what could possibly go wrong?
well, that's kind of the point of where the Dadzilla part comes in.
Uh,
See, the Dadzilla, you've heard of bridezillas. You've
oh, of
heard that
course.
term.
Mhm,
And having pastored, like I said, a lot of weddings, I had dealt with my share of bridezillas in my career and a few momzillas and a couple of that, mom of the bride things.
mhm.
And that wasn't all that much fun. And I knew what that was all about, but I had this begin to feel like, okay, here is what, Brad, I don't want you to do more than anything else. I do not want you to be I don't want something I do to somehow screw up this wedding
Mhm.
in any way possible. I didn't want to say something wrong. I didn't want to make some snarky comment to other family members or say something wrong in the vows or do a header, walking down the aisle or trip on a dress or anything like that. I was also, uh, my, you know, I was, I've always been overweight, but I was really way overweight then. I wanted to look better, feel better about myself physically and health wise and that type of thing and get my hey, guess what? Also, this is a shocker for some people, but the father of a bride also has some financial situations going on here that were not really anticipated,
Mhm.
not to the degree that they were called upon. So there was all that going on. But I was just afraid, Cheryl, I was going to script this wedding
Mm.
and I was going to do something to mess it up and therefore impact my relationship with my daughter and with others. But that daggone dance is what became the symbol of all this thing. Because that daggone dance, it was going to be a mashup of about a 4 minute plus mashup of her favorite songs. And I'm an old disc jockey, so I've actually disc jockey danced this before, and I know how to dance and get around a little bit. But it was going to be the mashup was not only the music, but it was also going to be a couple of different dance styles. So she signed us up. Like I said, hey, if there's anything I'm known for, it's being not graceful, being clumsy.
Mhm.
In athletics, what I lacked in talent, I made it for by being slow. But but she signed us up for dance classes at a classic dance studio near where we both live. I took these dance classes with her, and I don't know the teacher we had. I think she liked to call herself Miss Marina,
Mhm.
and I think you said you had Eastern European heritage, and she made
Mhm.
she was very clear that she was Eastern European, whatever it was, I forget what it was, but she had a very strict way of doing dancing. And we took, I think, 3 months worth of dance lessons every week, something like that. And I was messing up on the dance lessons, and I was not doing well. I stepped on the teacher, I stepped on my daughter, and I actually physically fell down on one occasion and yeah, trying to these various steps because it was waltz, it was a little jazz, a little hand action, it was kind of a dip thing, and all kinds of things that I was doing way out of my comfort zone.
Oh,
And
man.
this teacher just kind of, hey, no, do it again, Mr. Miller, do it again. And I said, well, yes, ma'am. And so here, but so there was that. Now, here's where I want to go with this thing. So I had all this stuff going on, and had this daggone image in my head of being, I am going to be Dadzilla in this thing. I'm going to ruin this wedding, and I'm going to break the one promise that I made to my daughter,
Mm.
which is I'm going to do everything I can to make this the best day of your life. I didn't want to
Mhm.
mess that up. So that's the problem. That's the adversity. What I try to teach people is you kind of have to identify your adversity,
Mhm.
whatever it is, your depression or your disease or
Mhm.
the going through a divorce, whatever it is. You have to identify it, and then you got to kind of attack it and go after it. So like I said, okay, Miller, okay, Brad, you are not going to be, the dadzilla of this wedding. People are not
Mhm.
going to know this wedding for what you did to screw it up. So you must be very intentional now about strangling the life out of Dadzilla and just be dad and be present and enjoy this event and do everything I can to fulfill my promise. So
Mhm.
that takes us to what I did to make it happen. So you want to go there?
Absolutely, because I'm just sitting here processing in my own little brain. I am a dancer. I'm classically trained. I've studied ballet for over 40 years. I still take ballet classes. And just seeing you and your daughter there, I really have a heart of compassion for you, thinking, oh, that poor man.
Well, saw that from some of the information about you're a dancer, and basically, you if you were my dance teacher, you would have trouble with me.
Well, let's put it to you this way. Okay, so I am Eastern European, so I do have a bit of that streak in me, but
Yes.
I am actually a very good teacher. I have the patience of a saint, which comes in handy a lot of times. And you would actually have enjoyed taking the dance classes with me.
Well, I
And your
appreciate
daughter
that.
would have been
And,
relieved.
and I only have the one daughter. I have two sons. So if I take dance lessons again, it may for a wedding, it's going to be with you. I'll just come out to Colorado and be with you, and you can put me through the paces there because that would be better. Because the going through the lessons was the painful part, and I believe that everybody's going to go through a bit of a wilderness experience. I believe
Mhm,
when you deal with an adverse thing, and so
mhm,
we had over a year to prepare for this wedding. But you get down to it, I got about 4 months out from the wedding, and I never will forget. I said, "Okay, you got to really get your act together here, Miller. You're 4 months out from this wedding, and you're not where you want to be." So I said, "Okay, you got to focus." And
mhm,
that's where I start to formulate some of the concepts I've used now in terms of how you got to really focus to get something done to kind of get
mhm,
yourself back on track. And so from like January, from like February to June of that year when her wedding was, I focused on several things. I got my physical health together, I got my financial house in order, I got my spiritual life
mhm,
much more engaged.
mhm,
I'm a spiritual person, but I became much more focused
mhm,
and journaling and studies and that type of thing. I also
mhm,
did the emotional work. I met with, I got reconnected with some therapists I'd had years before because
mhm,
they knew some of the history going on. I made intentional emotional uh, journeys, if you will, with some old time friends of mine who knew me and knew my friends, my accountability partners.
mhm,
So that was kind of the emotional piece. And I also began to get my bod together. I worked out every day. I got an accountability partner for my workouts at 5 a.m. And so I remember sloshing through the snow to go to the gym with
oh,
my my partner Scott, and we worked on it. And I got into at that I was a relatively early adopter of intermittent fasting uh,
mhm,
process and eating better, kind of a keto
mhm,
type of thing. And I just really focused for about 3 months there on
mhm,
all these things. But you know what else I did in terms of the dance? I practiced that daggone dance all the time, Cheryl. I got together, I kind of forced my daughter. I said, if we're going to do this dance, we're going to do it right. So we not only had the lessons, we got together on many other occasions, and I would go someplace, her house or my house or a church basement or whatever. I said, we're going to practice this thing. And she was willing to do it too. She wanted to do it right. But we
mhm,
practiced together. Then I practiced on my own. I went to church fellowship hall where I was at, practiced this thing I was doing with the dance steps, on my own, doing the thing. I know because I kept track of this. I practiced this dance on my own over 1,000 times,
mhm,
over 1,000 times. And then also got my own, my wife, I enrolled her in dance lessons at another dance studio because I say, if I'm going to dance this, we're going to dance together at this wedding. And so she enjoyed that. We had some fun doing that. So that was the fun part of it. There was challenge, there was
mhm,
difficulty, there was fun with it. And but I also practiced not only the dance, I wrote and rewrote my Father of the Bride toast speech. I
mhm,
rewrote that thing a dozen times at least and practiced it. I practiced walking down the aisle, which is an outdoor venue. I had to walk
mhm,
quite a ways actually to get to the altar area. I practiced that. I went through everything in my mind and many,
mhm,
many times, did all that. And I practiced the vows that I was going
mhm,
to share or we were going to talk about in the wedding. I practiced all that many, many times, much more so than I'd ever done at any other wedding, any other speech. And I've been a public speaker, a pastor for many years.
mhm,
Almost always practiced, but never to that
mhm,
extent because I wanted to have it down. I want to be ready.
mhm.
I wanted to be ready and for almost any contingency. And you want to know the results?
I would love to know the results. I'm hanging here.
All right, because that's where we want to go. Remember, I said I made a promise to my daughter
Mhm,
and myself and to God. It was a covenant thing, and I
mhm,
believe
okay.
and I believe in the. Of course, a wedding is a covenant relationship between two
Mhm,
people, but it's also in a Christian wedding. It is a covenant between the two people and God. And I kind of wrapped myself around this, that I'm going to be a part of this covenant as a promise. So I had to leverage the power of the promise for myself in
Mhm.
order then to apply what I needed to do at that wedding. So
Mm.
at the wedding, basically what happened is that uh, I the gathering beforehand went well with family and so on, and then went well. It was a beautiful sunny summer day. I actually fit into the suit, which I was scared about.
Mhm.
That I was fit in the suit because I'd lost about 60 pounds in about 3 months, and I was feeling better about myself that way. We had made different arrangements. Some of my family members were there to be really supportive of me, of what I knew I was a little nervous about it. My two
Mhm.
sons who were there to be supportive of me were there. And I managed to, my daughter and I had a moment before the wedding where she
Mhm.
just looked awesome as
Mhm.
she was and is. And she gave me an affirming smile and said she loved me and so on, and kind of
Aw.
something like, let's go do this, Dad. And I said, let's go. And so we walked down the aisle, and I somehow managed to walk down the aisle without falling on anybody or myself
Mhm.
or getting grass stains on me or bursting into tears,
Mhm.
and managed to get that done and to deal with all of that. And I managed to stand up in front of her and everybody there, a lot of people, and to do my part, the vows
Mhm.
well, speak well. I was really afraid I was going to. I'm a relatively decent public speaker, but I really was afraid I was going to mess up the words, say
Mhm.
something wrong, or fumble them up bad. Did that well. We went to the reception, and I was able to give what many people just said was, when it came to toast the bride and give the father of the bride toast, they just said it was a killer talk that I gave,
Oh.
about a 5 minute or so talk about her and her new husband and family and growing up and all kinds of good stuff. That was there, and then, but shortly after sure, not too long after toast of the toast speech I gave, the note, the DJ played the note for the father and the bride dance. That was our
Mhm.
cue, and went out on the dance floor, and with just she and I there, and we did we did the dance, and it just came off super well. I mean, the dips and the do's and the jazz and the little, you know, hip hop sort of things we were doing, and the music came together pretty good, and I managed to get through it, everything. And then right shortly after that, my daughter gave me the killer thing that killed me more than anything else, and what gave me a sense of purpose and place and peace in my life.
Mhm.
She just said to me, Cheryl, she said, Dad, thank you for making this the best day of my life. And so that was the moment, Cheryl. That was the moment. That was the moment I knew that I had fulfilled my promise to my daughter, the same daughter I'd lied to when she's 4 years old and said she can't grow up, but the same daughter who I was afraid I was going to mess up her wedding. And I
Oh.
fulfilled my promise, and I did it by killing Dadzilla. Dadzilla was
Mhm.
nowhere to be found, and it was a great day. And so I remember that so fondly, and it's been kind of the foundational thing about everything I've worked on since that moment, and other things I'm working on now in my life. Is you have to take that moment, Cheryl, that crushing adverse moment, the thing
Mhm.
that you think is going to kill you, and maybe
Mhm.
take others down with you,
Mhm.
because yeah, I was really fearful that the Dadzilla thing was going to kill me, and it was going to ruin the wedding, and everybody's going to be ticked at me, and I was going to take
Mhm.
other people down with me. You got to take that moment, that scary, scary, ugly moment of adversity, and you've got to
Mhm.
attack it by taking what I call the axe plan to get after it. And that's what I've learned since then. So, but what that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
That is a great story. And I actually, even when I was reading your profile and the first time I saw Dadzilla, of course, I almost fell off my chair because I was laughing so hard. But I also had this image in my mind of kind of like, this big, huge creature, of the
Oh, I
movies
felt,
we used to watch when we were kids that were
yeah.
terrible, that were so stupid.
Oh,
And I just saw that monster with the dad's face.
yeah. Well, I felt that way. Honest to God, I did. I felt like there are many moments in this whole process that I felt so insecure. I felt
Mm,
ugly, to be honest with you.
mhm, mhm,
Not only ugly physically because I was way overweight, but I also felt kind of ugly emotionally because I was not in the best place emotionally, spiritually,
mhm.
none of that. And I knew that because I've seen this before, I've seen ugly weddings. Okay.
Yes.
I've seen weddings where there was definitely people not happy
Mhm,
and not, no, that's not going to happen at my daughter's wedding. And
mhm,
so if I can help it, and
mhm,
plus I just had find myself in this particular circumstance where I had several major things that were really all on me, and I
mhm.
had to step up. And if I didn't, it was going to get ugly.
There's a few things I just want to highlight here. When you were talking about, and this is really for the listeners, I want you to listen very carefully. What Brad said is that he felt ugly. And I think it's really important to understand that men have issues with self-image as well. It's not just we women who struggle sometimes with our body image, our self-image, our sense of self. And it's a powerful thing and something that's really difficult to overcome.
No, I agree completely. And hey, here's the thing: if I'm officiating pastoring a wedding of someone else, someone else, then I have a little bit of control over the situation, and that
Mhm,
it really, you know, it's the bride's wedding to be sure on any wedding and the bride and groom's wedding, but nothing really happens unless the pastor, you know, conducts the wedding. And that's
mhm,
the kind of thing. But in this situation, I felt pretty, in many ways, out of control, kind of all
mhm.
these areas, physically, emotionally, spiritually.
Mhm,
And I knew I had to get my act together.
mhm. Yeah, that was quite a journey you had to take to get back to yourself.
No, yeah, because that's
And
what I
I
really was wanted to be. That's what she wanted me to be, just myself,
you.
dad, who's also a pastor
Mhm,
and is also here as well to represent God and the church and the covenant of marriage.
mhm,
So I was thrilled to do it,
mhm,
happy to do it, but it was a journey. It was a
mhm.
journey.
Well, congratulations, you did a fabulous job.
Hey, apparently she's been married for 8 years now, and I got 2 grandchildren out of the deal. That's the big bone.
Wow.
That's the big bonus that's
Uh-huh.
happening. In fact, that's my grandchildren are part of the real joy of my life
Mhm,
and a
mhm,
real important part of another challenge that I'm facing right now
mhm,
with cancer that I'm dealing with. So that's
mhm.
everybody's got just because you take care of Dadzilla and the wedding, that kind of thing. Other things come up in your life,
Absolutely.
and the idea of what I want to teach here, what I would love to teach, is how can you have a framework to deal with
Mhm,
adversity? Because
mhm,
adversity always comes, and it doesn't always
mhm,
come on our time schedule. It
mhm,
just happens. So what do you do
mhm,
when you have a divorce happen or when you have disease like cancer or
mhm,
something like
mhm,
COVID comes along and
mhm.
messes everybody up, or you have
Right.
a bankruptcy or
Mhm,
you run, something happens, or death in the family, or
mhm,
you fall into depression, any number of things. They happen
mhm,
to all of us, but how do you handle
mhm,
that? Because so many people, Cheryl, get stuck. Do you agree with this?
mhm.
They get
Absolutely.
they get stuck in their adversity. In fact,
Mhm,
it's almost epidemic proportions in our world
mhm,
right now, people being stuck in adversity. And if that to happen, I notice every year around the first of the year, Google does a kind of a little video that talks about the most popular search terms for the year.
mhm,
And the one for this last year was "How can I heal?" was one of their first
mhm,
search. So that just tells me if everybody in the world is saying "How can I heal?" then people are
mhm,
searching for
mhm,
meaningfulness in the midst
mhm,
of what they often perceive
mhm,
is meaninglessness.
mhm. Well, the other thing about adversity, when you get stuck in it, it's like you're feeding the beast.
It becomes a spiral. It becomes, I call the malaise. A
Mhm,
malaise. I sometimes call it in my writing I'm doing, I sometimes call this the malaise of mediocrity, where you
mm,
get kind of stuck in this realm and you just get stuck and you can't move around and you kind of give up and you
mhm,
settle for mediocrity. And I don't want to do that.
mhm,
I don't really want to do that. And I don't think anybody should have to settle for that.
mhm.
But in order to do that, you got to break out of your adversity.
And I want you to go into that in a little bit more detail, but there's another thing I wanted to highlight that you were talking about too, when you're talking about, the wedding and the dancing
Sure.
and how much you were practicing, not only with your daughter, but even by yourself, going through the movement patterns, but you were going through it in your mind
Yes.
and the
Uh,
power of visualization and
yes.
seeing yourself in the moment as you are reviewing the steps and the patterns.
If you do anything big in life, you have to understand the more you can prepare and integrate the various aspects of who you are. And I have the four aspects I believe that for who people are is the physical. And I call the process I use the ACTS plan. That's taking action. And the next one is the C in the word ACT stands for to connecting with the higher power. That's your spiritual
Mm-hmm.
life. And the T in the word ACT stands for think strategically, which has to do with your process. What is the habits? What is the things that you go through? And then the S in the word ACT is to serve others with love. But I believe you got to integrate that. And that's what I did in my life, and what I try to teach others now is that's the cognitive piece. You got to have that, but it has to be integrated with the emotional piece and the physical piece. You don't,
Mm-hmm.
let me, you're a dancer, you're a movement. I forgot the process you use, but I know you have a name for one of the movement processes that you,
Feldenkrais?
that's it.
Mhm,
And, but all that in some form or another is integrated in that you can't really have the best physical performance unless you have an emotional and even spiritual uh, manifestation of that. Is that fair enough?
absolutely, it's absolutely true, and it's something we practice all the time in martial arts, even maybe not cognitively, but
Mhm.
that's part of what we're doing in our training is we're actually growing our spirit, so we can not only protect ourselves, but to protect others and to serve others.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It's just the integration of all those things, and they don't just happen. You
Mhm,
got to formulate a plan and implement the plan and practice the plan.
mhm,
And so that's what I like to be about, and that's why I call this the ACTS plan, ACTS
mhm,
plan, to help you to do just that. And I think
mhm,
you could do that. It doesn't take forever either. I believe you can do this in about 40 days. That you can at least
mhm,
get your life going on change from wherever you're at to where
mhm,
you want to be, the promised life, if you
mhm,
focus on these things, and that you
mhm,
you can do it. I like to use the biblical metaphor of there's at least a dozen of them of Moses on the mountain for 40 days and Jesus in the
mhm,
wilderness
mhm,
and Jesus in the
mhm,
wilderness for 40 days, Noah on the ark for 40 days. Those are
mhm,
several ones of there, the temptation of Jesus in the wilderness for 40 days. But what I'm getting at is you had to, in those biblical metaphors, you had to kind of identify the situation and then work through the wilderness experience, which
mhm,
includes the physical hunger, the physical manifestations, the spiritual element, the emotional relationship
mhm,
element. And if you
mhm,
think about it, Cheryl, what do many social scientists and therapists and other folks say that in order to change some bad thing in your life, some bad habit, you need what, 30, 60 days to do it, right? Kind of
mhm,
focused. That's what they'll say.
mhm,
If you're going to change a bad habit, you need
mhm,
to focus on it for 40 days or 6 weeks or so. If you want to stop
mhm,
smoking, you have to be very intentional about stopping smoking. If you want to
mhm,
change your bad eating habits, you got to be very
mhm,
intentional about it. It's just not going to happen automatically until it becomes ingrained in who you are. So the
mhm,
practice, the mindfulness, as you said, the vision. Here's what the
mhm,
vision I had was clear. The final vision is I wanted my daughter to say those words to me. You helped to make this the greatest day of my
mhm,
life. And that was my vision. my vision was realized. But in order to get there, I had to integrate that in my mind every day. Every time I took a dance step, I was thinking, okay, this is a part of this process. I got to think it through until it becomes
Mhm,
more natural and that type of thing.
mhm,
Definitely part of it. The mind,
mhm.
body, spiritual
And
experience.
every step you were literally one step closer to your goal. And I love the fact that you're emphasizing practice because wishful thinking just isn't going to do it.
No, it doesn't, because that's what many of us have. That's kind of that. That's when you start to kind of descend into this spiraling area of, when
Mhm,
people descend in the darkness, when people go into depressed states, even
mhm,
suicide ideation and some really bad
mhm,
things, of which I've been very uh, privileged to talk to a lot of people who have had these situations and got out of it. But if
mhm,
you allow yourself, you got to break the pattern. You
mhm,
have got to break the pattern. You can get help to do it, but you got to take personal responsibility here.
mhm. But the good news is when you do take that personal responsibility and you start taking some action, the change doesn't come right away, but it does come.
Yeah, it's about making progress as far as I'm concerned, and your progress may not be evident initially.
Mhm,
I would say, just using the father daughter dance as an analogy here, I would say that I'm going to say the first dozen times I did that dance, it was bad. I mean, it was really bad. It was almost getting kicked out of class, kind of bad, and by Miss Miriam. And but hey, but I was not going to let it go because this wedding was coming regardless, and I was daggone sure no one is going to step in and take my place on that father daughter dance, or that kind of thing. So
You know, I admire you so much for having that kind of willingness and putting yourself out there and being so open to that kind of criticism. I mean, that is really dance teachers sometimes are not nice people. I mean, they can be just absolutely cruel. And it's so difficult when you're trying something new and you feel like, you look like an electrocuted frog and you're trying so hard. And it's just the fact that you just kept going back and you kept working at it. Wow, I thought I was stubborn.
well, here's the thing, Cheryl. There are people who have some natural talents and tendencies. I'm sure you're one of them in terms of grace and dance and so on. You have a certain level of natural ability.
Hmm.
But if you want to be your best, or if you want to enhance that, you still got to work at it, right?
Right.
You still got to
Right.
work at it and to apply that. And I have a few natural abilities in terms of public speaking and a few other
Hmm.
things, but
And storytelling. You're an
it's storage.
incredible storyteller.
But you know what? When I was a kid, I was a stutterer, and I
Mm.
had to work through my stuttering as a kid with a speech therapist and did that. So in terms of storytelling, I've tried to learn from other storytellers and try to have a beginning, a middle, and end to a story and
Mhm.
some focus there. But that
Mhm.
didn't come that you just got to work at that too.
Mhm.
So I admire what you do here, because you're really working with people to help them have vitality in life as baby
Mhm.
boomers, of which I am.
Mhm.
And so many people let themselves go, don't they, Cheryl?
Well, they let
It's
themselves go, but I think sometimes they think it's too difficult or, they're past their prime. It's not going to happen. And
it's too late for me.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
well, yeah, exactly. And a lot of this, unfortunately, is coming from, the fitness industry, the, media, the medical community. Oh, you're supposed to have aches and pains because you're over 60, or you can't do ballet anymore because you're over 60. You can't do martial arts. You might get hurt. Well, I had a spectacular fall. It was New Year's Eve day. I was at the dojo and it had a little bit of snow but not a lot, and when I walked into the dojo it was just a little bit wet on the outside of the cement. It's actually decorative cement, so it warmed up as we were in class for 2 hours, so I didn't even think about it when I was walking out. And my arms were full of, I had a couple of weapons, I had my notebook, my water bottle, took my first step, and all of a sudden, before I knew it, I was flat on the ground. It was a spectacular fall. And all around me was like my katana, my bokken, my notebook. I hit so hard that pages flew out of my notebook. And I think it was just one of those things that I didn't even realize what was happening. I just automatically did a break fall. So I must have thrown all my stuff in the air. I don't remember. And
Wow.
a bunch of the guys they came running out going, "Are you all right? Are you okay?" And I was laughing and I looked at them and I said, "Did you see my break fall? It must have been really good." I wasn't hurt at all. And I
Oh my
thought when I got
goodness.
home, I thought, maybe I should take a prophylactic Advil, because someone my age falling on ice, hitting that hard. And I thought, no, you just wait and see what happens. And in the morning, I felt great.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Now, if
That's awesome.
anybody, and a couple of people had heard that story, two of them actually laughed and said it sounded like a cartoon. These were much younger women. But
Right.
anybody, a woman in her 60s, a fall like that, oh my gosh, you shouldn't be doing that. Anyhow, you have to be careful, and that's just wrong. I mean, we can do anything that we want to do, and we can just keep growing. The older we get doesn't mean that we're falling apart. It just means that we have to try differently.
You have to think and act strategically, I think, believe now. You still have your end goal in mind, of what, if it's physical health
Mhm.
and vitality, and to have that in mind, but you got to work at it and to apply it. And you don't have to give up just because you're a
Mhm.
baby boomer. You just don't. And too many people do. And I admire you for that. Way to go.
Thank
Awesome.
you. It was a
Awesome.
spectacular fall. Yeah, and I love the fact you just said baby boomers. You don't have to give up. And I think that baby boomers are a very special generation. I
Awesome. Me
think
too.
that I think that we have something that I don't know, it's like don't tell me what to do. There's a
Oh,
certain tenacity I think that defines part of our generation, but that's just me. That's what I think.
no, I think you're on it. I think you're on it. That's why it has been the cause of a lot of good things and some
Mhm.
challenging things in our world right now, because some of us baby boomers have kind of left a mess for people in my daughter's generation and behind
Mhm.
them.
Yeah.
But we'll work through it. We got something to teach them
Yeah,
as
clean up on
well.
L9. Hopefully they'll be able to take care of it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So what I really want to know is what do you do when the bottom falls out? Because I was stalking you a little bit on social media. So I love that
Yeah.
title. And you kind of did have the bottom fall out recently.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, quite literally.
Mm-hmm.
I had kind of a whole big bottom fall out of my life. And on some other story, I will tell you literally about the bottom falling out when I fell through a manhole into a sewer. That's a whole nother story. But I looked. Some people said I tried to commit suicide that day, but it was not to be. But I literally fell through a manhole into a sewer system. That was not good. But anyhow, but
Ooh.
I'll save that for another time.
Okay.
But what happened to me? You were talking about baby boomers. As we record this, I'm 64 years old, and I was retired less than a year ago. About 8 or 9 months ago, I retired at age 63, and I had big plans, Cheryl, for my retirement with my
Mm-hmm.
wife, and they included traveling. And she's going to retire either later this year, or early next year. She's a few years younger than me, so we had a plan all worked out in the
Mm-hmm.
finances. And we live in Indianapolis. We have a son who lives in Oregon, and we were going to travel out to Oregon. We're going to travel Europe and do all this kind of thing. And we still were going to do almost all of that eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But and I said, I'm going to be very engaged with the things I want to be engaged in, which is podcasting, talking to people. Like you're writing a book and becoming more of I've been a public speaker, but also be a public speaker in like business events and things of that
Mm-hmm.
nature. But just a few months, just 5 months after I retired in July, in December of last year, I got news from my doc that I had cancer, prostate cancer. And and I just had to laugh. It's like, you got to be kidding me. This is the story I've heard from some of my other people in my life and my ministry, some of my colleagues, where you retire and then something bad happens.
Mm-hmm.
I go, that's not supposed to be me. And so instead of making these plans for traveling and so on, we're still making the plans, but instead of implementing them right away, it meant all the stuff goes along with having cancer. It meant going through some depressed state and some
Mm-hmm.
reevaluated state. It also meant they're going to the various batteries of tests and so on, and scans and pokes and prods and all this good stuff. And then so it meant about 2.5 weeks ago, I ended up having surgery for my for my prostate to be removed.
Mhm.
And so I've recovered relatively well. I wouldn't be talking to you here today
Mhm.
about that.
Obviously. And
But
you're looking very well. You're looking very healthy and fit and
well,
vibrant.
thank you very much. I'm feeling good. But here's the kicker, and here's where I'm dealing with right now. What's a couple of the things that I'm just going to get real. I'm going to be vulnerable and personal with you here right
Mhm.
now, and with your audience, and I think people will understand and get it. When you have something bad happens to you, you have to deal with the consequences or the fallout in order then to deal with that in order to move forward. And in my case, among the consequences and fallout of not only not able to do all the plans we had right away for our
Mhm.
travels and so on, it also,
Mhm.
at the moment and for foreseeable future, leaves me uh, incontinent and impotent,
Mm.
which was not exactly what I had in mind for
Right.
my life at this point in my life. And so, what does those kind of things mean? When you talk about the bottom dropout, okay,
Mhm.
incontinent just means you don't have control. You're out of you don't have control of your body, of your
Mhm.
bladder, and so on, and that's not good. And of course, impotent means that you've kind of lost your power, your sexual power,
Mhm.
and it also let me feel a little bit incomplete, like some
Mhm.
things left undone here,
Mhm.
and that I want to get done. And so that was a bummer, and I'm still a little bit in the process of processing all of this right now.
Mhm.
There's only been I knew this in preparation for the surgery, that this was a very likely going to be the situation, but I'm dealing with the
Ugh.
reality now in the last couple of weeks. And so what does that mean? Okay, the bottom drops out.
Mm.
Would you like me to share with you what it means for me now, just as
Absolutely.
I'm kind of processing this? Well, there's that sense when the bottom drops out, that's just health, divorce, any number of things. You get this feeling that I think in some ways it's it is the incontinent and it's the impotence. It is the kind of losing control and losing your power.
Mhm.
And so, how do you then begin to regain and
Mhm.
also feeling incomplete? So, how do you
Mhm.
begin to regain that and to get that back? And that's what I'm working on right now. And
Mhm.
talking with you is helping me process some of that. But you know who has helped me process this more than anybody else? This kind of goes back to my prior story about my daughter. Guess who's helping me process this right now?
I'm gonna say it's either your daughter or maybe even just being with your grandkids, but I'm
It's
choosing door number 1, your
well,
daughter.
you're close. It's actually my two granddaughters. My two
Oh.
granddaughters who have emerged from that marriage 8 years ago with my daughter. We talked about so much earlier. But my two granddaughters, and they are 4 and 2. So the older one is almost the exact same age as my daughter was when I had my little episode. I was talking to you about her. And I tell
When
you
you lied
what,
to her, when you told her a
when
lie.
I lied to her, you don't have to grow up. And dang it, she did it. She did it. So it's sort of a similar moment with my two granddaughters, 4 and 2, around Christmas time. Now, I was given the final diagnosis of my cancer right around Christmas time.
Oh.
And that was you just kind of throw that into the mix there. But a couple of days later, I had the opportunity to my wife and I, to spend some time with our two granddaughters,
Mhm.
just the four of us, 4 and 2.
Hmm.
So we did the grandpa and grandma granddaughter thing. We went bowling and arcade and and they wanted to go to McDonald's and all that good stuff. I don't go to McDonald's much anymore, but we went to get the Happy Meals and stuff. But here's what happened to me. I've had these transformative moments from time to time. I've had this one recently, which is informing me moving forward.
Mhm.
And I looked at my two granddaughters, 4 and 2, and they're just giggling and happy and having fun. There's to me, a 4 and 2-year-old little girls are about the best there is in a way. And they're having fun. And I looked at them and I'm just sitting across the table from them and they're cutting up and laughing and giggling and just being cute as can be. And I'm thinking, you know what, Brad? I really want to see what these two little faces and these two little personalities are like as happy and delightful young women at
Mhm.
say 18 or 20 when they're graduating high school or going off to
Mhm.
college or getting married, whatever they're doing at that age.
Mhm.
But I really want to see them grow up
Mhm.
and be a part of their life. And I knew that the diagnosis of my cancer was not that good. It meant if I didn't do anything, it meant I would not see them as young women, is what it meant.
Mhm.
And so that was my aha moment when I literally, Cheryl, could visualize their little faces. I know there's some AI art things that you can somehow take somebody's face and age it or make it younger or whatever. And
Mhm.
I'm scared to do that kind of stuff, but anyhow,
Mhm.
but I know they have something like that, don't they? Where you can kind of take people and
Mhm.
extrapolate it out. But in my own mind, I could see their faces at they're 4 and 2 right now. I could see their ages basically at 20 and 18. And I could
Mm.
see their faces and see them being happy and being enjoying what I could basically see as they were enjoying their time with their grandma and grandpa at age
Mhm.
4 and 2, and them enjoying time with us at age 20 and 18.
Mhm.
I could literally see that, Cheryl. I could see it. And I said, okay, what do I got to do now? What's my new vision to get there?
Mhm.
To get there. So that's what led me to surgery and to deal with now the present pain and of the physical incontinence, the physical impotency, and other things that go with it. And that's what I'm dealing with right now. That's my wilderness experience now, and I will
Mhm.
figure this out and to get
Oh, you
forward.
will figure it out.
Oh yeah, I will, but
Yeah.
getting through this is going to be the case. But that's my present bottom dropout experience. But
Mhm.
you've had them too. Everybody in your listening audience, Cheryl, has had those episodes where the bottom drops out, and how you get out of it makes a difference. And if you'll allow me, I want to unpack for a minute how I'm doing it. Is that
Okay.
okay? I just want to take
Absolutely.
I just want to take it for just a moment there, and how I might be able to be helpful to your audience and some other
Okay.
people along that line. And I've mentioned before, and I just have this whole process I call the 40-day way, which is basically how in 40 days you can begin to move forward through this wilderness experience to
Mhm.
have a plan. I call it the PLP, your promise life plan, to
Mhm.
help you get from your bottom dropout experience to get there. Because
Mhm.
I'm not going to get to the granddaughters being 20 and 18 by doing what I was doing.
Mhm.
The wait and see method of my particular cancer would mean I was going to be dead in less than 5 years. At
Wow.
least was the prognosis, at least. So, but in your case, in everybody's case, how do you get there? So I got this 40-day way plan, and it boils down to these four things I mentioned earlier, the acts part of it, ACTS. A is to take action. So what are you going to do to take action? In my part, the taking action, now this is the physical part of this. The taking
Mhm.
action, in my case, was to get the surgery and do all the things I got to do there in this. You
Mhm.
got to take action, sometimes dramatic, massive action. You
Mhm.
got to do it. Taking dance lessons for 12 weeks, things like that. Okay, so that's the A. And this is where I really wanted people to emphasize that to take the A, what is one action you can take? Write down one thing action that you can take regards to your adversity, your bottom dropout experience. The C is to connect with a higher power. That's the spiritual element.
Mhm.
uh, Whether you're a man or woman of faith, whatever faith it is, call upon it to see there's a spiritual world and realm greater than self, and you
Mhm.
can't do this on your own. You just can't.
Mhm.
I don't believe you. I just my take. But you got to get connected to that. So whatever that means, that might mean prayer. It might mean meditation. It might mean journaling. I keep my journal nearby right here.
Mhm.
Uh, Whatever it is, you have to be intentional about connecting
Mhm.
to the spiritual realm greater than self, because that's
Mhm.
the next part of that. The T in the word acts is to think with discipline, and
Mhm.
that is your habits, that's your processes. You are a ninja because you have practice and you have a program and a process that you have know the process and you work it, that develops the habits and the things that you have to do now. And that's the
Mhm.
disciplines I'm going through now. In physical health, it means certain ways I've changed my eating and my exercise plan and things like that to be even more conducive to my health. But whatever they are, but you got to have a plan. You got to work the plan, as we talk about here. So that is the think. That's the cognitive piece.
Mhm.
The the A is your physical, the action is your physical piece.
Mhm.
The C is is your spiritual piece, and your cognitive piece is your think with discipline, and the emotional piece is to serve others with love. That's where you give something back. That's
Mhm.
where what's what you're doing with the FemiNinja podcast, and you're writing your deal, you're giving something back, because you don't have true fulfillment, Cheryl, until you give
Mhm.
something back.
Mhm.
You don't, and the lack of fulfillment or meaninglessness in life is where so many people are at. And one of the ways you can get meaningfulness in life is to
Mhm.
give something back. And if you could do those four things, your act plan, write down one action, do
Mhm.
one thing to connect with a higher power, to do one thing to strategically implement what you're talking about, and to do something to give back to some others, that's going to help you a lot. And that's what I'm all about here in the 40-day way, and what the coaching and the teaching and the consulting and the podcasting that I'm
I
all.
love it. That's amazing. You put it all together in such a beautiful package that makes so much sense, and you include everything: body, mind, spirit, and soul.
Well, that's what I believe in. I really do, because it's hey, here's the thing. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen so many times
Mhm.
where something bad happens and they give up. They either go into a state of depression,
Mhm.
or sometimes they physically die. I know of a situation, this is just one example of my ministry, where a couple were married for many, many years. Uh, the woman died of a bad disease, and her husband died 36 hours later. He literally couldn't live with that, with the thought of
Mhm.
not being with her. It happens, and people can do that. But then, you can do something about your adversity. You don't have to live with it. You can do something about it. It's going to
Mhm.
take some work, but people like Cheryl I love can help you by her podcast, by her writing. And I think I can too. I'm here, and I'm here to help. I'm here and I'm available to be helpful to people in your audience, and
Perfect
anybody.
segue for me to say, where can people find you?
Well, the best thing that people can do, I call my plan, my process, the 40-day way. So go to 40dayway.com, and you can find most ways to get connected to me there.
Mhm.
You'll get there the 40-day way chart, which is kind of the flow chart of everything I've explained here. It's much more
Mhm.
involved than what I've shared here. And you can
Mhm.
also get connected to my podcast, which is at drbradmiller.com, which is called Beyond Adversity.
Mhm.
And you can do those things at 40dayway.com. You'll get
Mhm.
a free copy of the 40-day way flow chart. You can find out more about coaching and things like that. And I got a process that people free call with me. If you get on a call with me, I have what I call the big, like what I call the big button process, which is with four questions,
Mhm.
we can get you started in
Awesome.
15 minutes.
Excellent. Excellent. So
40
there
day,
is some
40dayway.com.
40, okay, there is something else in your that you're working on. So you are writing a book.
I am writing a book, and it is called The Promise Given Life. That's my working title. And it basically is the story that I'm talking about here right now,
Mhm.
about how everybody deserves and I believe, has the opportunity for a God given promised life. The biblical metaphor was the promised land. Moses was going to go from slavery
Mhm.
through the wilderness, the desert, for 40 years to find the promised land. And I believe
Mhm.
that God gives everybody a promise given life. And I define that as a life of peace and prosperity and purpose. But in order to get there, you got to slay your dragons, slay your Dadzilla, in order to get through the way there. It's my process here. It's my 40-day way process. Working
Mhm.
on it, and hope to have that out later this year, maybe early next year, called The Promise Given Life, the 40-day way
Okay.
to your life of peace and prosperity and purpose.
And I told you before we started recording, and now I'm going to say it again so my listeners will know that I will be very angry with you if you do not tell me when it goes live, when it's published, so I can get it and share it, and maybe even have you back on the show. I would love that.
Oh, awesome. Well, I do not want to be in trouble with any ninjas, that's for sure.
No, you don't. Oh, trust me. We're very sneaky people.
Oh,
So
yeah.
one other question I have for you about the book in particular is the sewer story going to be in the book?
Oh, yeah. The book will be basically 40 short chapters where I outline chapters of 1,000 words or so. I've got manuscript more or less halfway done. Of most of these chapters will be a story out of my life or a story out of somebody who I've interviewed or out of my experience that kind of describes these things that I've gone through. Then my process to help you to navigate that using the ACTS plan, and then the result, and then an exercise. So it's kind of a working book. You got to work through it. But my personal stories will be in there, including the fall through the manhole story and many others. Hey, I've got the one about being I got stories about almost being drowned in a river by an old lady in a bad bathing suit. And one where I almost got arrested in Russia for carrying Bibles to a place I shouldn't have done. And
Wow.
several.
That's a little scary.
Yeah. If you could bring me back, I got lots of stories for you. Sometimes they're just for fun. Sometimes they're scary, but they all have, for me, I've tried to think every experience of my life and try to bring purpose and meaningfulness in it, and also learn from the stories of others, like Cheryl I love, who has an incredible story to tell in your own right. And so one of these days, I'm going to have you on Beyond Adversity.
Oh, I would love that. I would love that. I've got a lot of adversity stories, but going back to one of my favorite that turned out really well, I almost fell off a roller coaster when I was 5 years old. I was almost 5. I was just a few months before my 5th birthday. And if it were not for my sister being in the car with me and just grabbing me as I was going over the edge a couple of times, I wouldn't be here right now. But thank goodness she grabbed onto my pants, and the only thing she could grab onto was like my underwear. So thank goodness the elastic on my underwear held up. Yeah. And I'm looking down at the ground halfway out of the cart, and I see my mother with her arms outstretched running alongside as if she were going to catch me. The woman was 7 months pregnant. I'd never seen her run in my life. I'd never seen her catch anything. And I'm thinking this could be bad, but it turned out okay.
What a story. That sounds like something out of some bad comedy movie, doesn't it, or something like that?
Pretty much. And then there was the time that we had a car go through our living room window. Yeah, that was another good one.
Oh my gosh, you're awesome. You're awesome, Cheryl.
You're awesome. You are such an inspiration, Brad. I am so happy to have you on the show today. I'm so happy to make your acquaintance, and I know that we will be in touch because I just love talking to you, and I could listen to your stories pretty much all day, but I think you have an appointment. You need to go.
Yeah. Well, appreciate you a lot. And look, I've loved listening to your podcast. You are providing an important service to women in particular, but really anybody, any baby boomer, any man out there that has to do with the whole fit and fabulous. I'm not sure how you term it, everything exactly, but being fit and alive and vibrant. Hey, my mother is 85 years old. She's fit and vibrant as anybody I know. And you get that the whole thing about you can be vital, you can be alive at any stage in life. You're teaching people that. Love it. Keep after it. Don't give up. And I'm here with you. I'm in your corner.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much, Brad. I just love you. Thank you so much for being here. And I will be thinking about you, keeping you in my thoughts and prayers, and sending lots of healing warrior energy spirit your way.
Received, accepted, and shared. That's the way I like to take things like that. You receive the gift and you share the gift.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks again for being on the show.
Awesome.
And everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you. As always, please share this episode with everybody you know. Such incredible, important information, as well as some very entertaining stories in it. Do connect with Brad. Go to his website. It is the 40-Day Way.
Yeah, 40dayway.com.
40dayway.com. And, connect with him. And, just remember that no matter what happens, even if you fall in a sewer, it can turn out all right if you take the right action. And Brad is here to help. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.